We're going to talk more about this with our guest right now, Dr. Philip Brenner. He's a professor of international relations at American University here in Washington, D.C. Good to see you, sir.
Nice to see you.
Michael was talking about currency unification. Now, he talked about what could happen or what hasn't happened. Let's talk about what this is. For our audience, there are two currencies. Explain to us how this all works first.
Okay, so there's a local Cuban currency that people can buy goods with that are made in Cuba. But goods that they have to import, those Cubans can only buy with a hard currency, a Cuban hard currency, and the Cubans get that hard currency by exchanging something like a Japanese yen or a euro or a dollar. And the reason this started was because Cubans 20 years ago were getting a lot of remittances from their families, and their families were sending them dollars, and those dollars were circulating around the island. The government wanted to be able to capture those. So it said that you can't use dollars anymore, but we'll let you trade those dollars on a one-to-one basis for what they call a Cuban hard currency, a CUC, a C-U-C.
That's actually very fascinating. So fast forward to today. What's wrong with that system?
The problem with that system is that it provides an enormous subsidy for poorer Cubans because the Cuban peso, if it floated on the international market, would be worth about 2 cents. But a Cuban who has a peso can essentially buy that hard currency for essentially getting 4 cents worth. And so the Cuban government is essentially subsidizing poorer people and taxing richer people. And it also confuses the Cuban trading system. They don't know what's coming in and what's going out.
It's confusing me. I mean, this is confusing for, I think, pretty much 99% of our audience out there who's not an expert at currencies. Are there any other, I'm just curious, are there any other countries that do this?
Well, no other country does it formally, but of course it happens informally. There's a black market in currencies. In Argentina, for example, the official exchange rate is 9 pesos for the dollar, but 15 pesos for the dollar if you go to any, it's open on the street.
I can imagine that once they unify the currency and just let's say they have one proper currency like most other countries do, that's going to make it much easier to do trading around the world.
Be much easier, but there will be a cost. And the problem is the cost will be for poor people. And so the Cuban government will have to subsidize poor people, and it'll have to find a way to tax the rich people, in effect, the tax they're getting now. And they don't have a system like that that's efficient. That's what's slowing this down.
I'm sure there's a few countries around the world that can help them put together a system like that. Okay, let's talk about what this might mean, some of the positives this could be, because I imagine they're not going to do it unless they think it's good for the country. So how is this going to benefit, say, tourists, businesses, real estate, and all this stuff that they're trying to privatize and have a more normal economy?
Well, it will be good for tourists, unless the prices double, and there will be inflation in Cuba as a result of this, but unless the prices double, things will be cheaper in Cuba for tourists. It will bring in even more tourists than they have now, and they have over 2 million tourists a year, the largest number in the Caribbean. So that'll be good for Cuba in that sense. It will enable international business to trade more effectively, and for Cuba to know what things actually cost. They don't know that now.
Does it, I'm just curious, does it help reduce, say, corruption?
And yes, exactly. Good question. That's another reason they want to do this, because it will reduce corruption. They'll be able to account better for what they're losing.
A huge can of worms that we were trying to avoid to open up, but nonetheless, that's a very good point. What about the inflation issue? Some say that this is going to have an impact on that. Some say it's a short-term blip, be it for a month or two, and it'll just go away.
Oh, it'll be more than a month or two. There will be inflation because the business people will have to raise their prices. How that gets regulated then with subsidies and taxes, there will be inflation, and there will be winners and losers in that.
Michael Voss was talking about the timeline. There is no timeline because we don't know. What should we expect here?
Well, they announced this actually more than a year ago. They said they would roll it out in January. Then they said in the spring they would roll it out for a few businesses. That hasn't happened yet, so it's unpredictable.
Dr. Philip Brenner, Professor, American University, thank you very much for spending a few minutes with us and explaining something that I think most of us don't know much about. Now we do. Thank you.
Thank you.